Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you could join me for today's Arkansas Alive. So stay tuned. All this week, I'm going to be teaching on how to kill 11 million people. I know that sounds morbid, but I want to give you the answer to that question because that's really what we're going to be talking about. How do you kill 11 million people? This is in reference to the Holocaust. You lie to them. And this has been going on in me for a week now. How do you kill 11 million people? How do you get that many people to yield to a mass murder? You lie to them. We're going to talk about that this week. Stay tuned. Arkansas Live starts right now. I said that's a very morbid a title, but I wanted to explain so you wouldn't think I've tuned into the wrong channel. Several years ago, I was walking through a bookstore and I was looking at books and I saw this little booklet. Now the wrapper is off of it, but it said, "How to Kill 11 Million People." Now I knew it was referring to the Holocaust, and the author is Andy Andrews, and I've met Andy. He actually spoke at one of our National Association of Christian Lawmakers conferences down in Florida 2 years ago. And I've been serving on the board of National Association of Christian Lawmakers, NACL, an organization started by Arkansas State Senator Jason Rapert. In his travels, he noted that there were Christian lawmakers all over the United States that wanted to do something in their states. They wanted to represent God. They wanted godly legislation. And so Jason formed this organization. I've been serving on the board for 2 or 3 years now. And we have 23 states in America that have signed on, which means there are legislators from 23 states in America. That's half the population. There's probably more than that now, maybe 25. That's half of the population of the country. We have 23 or 25 chairpersons that chair these state chapters. And Andy Andrews was one of our first guest speakers. And I was able to meet him, and he's a delightful man and quite humorous. And you might wonder, why did he write a book on how to kill 11 million people? And he starts off by teasing you with that question over and over again. And it became clear to me that the American public and even church people don't understand the warning that Jesus gave in Matthew 24 when he was asked by his disciples, "What are the signs of your coming? What's the sign of the end of the age?" And the first thing that he said to them was, "Take heed that no man deceive you." Deception is what Satan uses to steal, kill, and destroy. The Bible calls Satan the father of lies. There is no truth in Satan. Satan has no understanding of truth whatsoever. He is a liar. He's the father of lies. So he uses lying to get across his agenda and to fulfill his narrative, which is to steal, kill, and destroy. What's amazing, and Andy points this out, what's amazing is how people are manipulated into believing a lie. Now, Hitler set out to kill 11 million people. He didn't succeed, and primarily Jewish people. He only killed 6 million, 4 million. He was not able to kill all 11 million that he had targeted, basically because he could not come up with a solution, later called the final solution, to kill these people systematically by the tens and hundreds of thousands and dispose of their bodies. So that's when his chief henchman, Adolf Eichmann, came up with an idea of the death camps and the ovens and the incinerators and the gas chambers. And they were able to systematically kill more people on a regular basis. Now, for those of you that maybe don't know what the Holocaust was, the Holocaust was Hitler's desire to exterminate the Jewish people off the face of the earth. He wanted to kill every Jew. He wanted to get rid of what he called a menace to society. He wanted to create a perfect utopian society, an Aryan society, mostly Germans, white people, blonde-headed, blue eyes. He wanted a superior race, and he wanted to get rid of everybody else that didn't fit that catalog. And he not only killed Jewish people, but he killed political prisoners. He killed criminals, and they all dressed in different color codes. The Jews had a yellow star. He clothed the homosexuals in pink. He killed the homosexuals. He killed political. He killed gypsies. He killed anybody that was undesirable. In fact, let me read you some of the statistics here. There's no singular significance in these numbers. The actual people killed, 11,283,000. That's the number of people who were killed by Adolf Hitler between 1933 and 1945. Now, it does not include 5 million German civilians and military war dead as a result of the war. Neither does it include 28 million Europeans killed during World War II as a result of Hitler's aggressive government policies. Now, you can kind of get a handle on this if you know what's going on now in Ukraine, when Russia is systematically killing and targeting civilians, civilian complexes, apartment buildings. These are not military targets. These are civilian targets. They're easier. And, you know, the Russian people, the polls that I've seen, the Russian people seems to be in agreement with what Putin tells them. And he tells them the Ukrainians are the aggressors, and they're wanting to destroy Mother Russia, etc. Now, why would a Russian citizen believe the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin? Why would they believe him when you and I can sit in our living room every night and watch the news, and we can see that Russia is the aggressor, and they're murdering tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians, many of them Jewish people, through the organization Christians United for Israel, which I also serve on the board and have for the last 15 years. We have over 10 million members worldwide. We've identified with an agency that we work with 8,000 Ukrainian Jews that we have helped get back to Israel. So why do the Russian people want to believe this lie? Why do they want to believe a lie instead of the truth? Well, that's what we're going to talk about this week. But let me tell you, if I can find this, I didn't separate it. Hitler had a method, and he said that if you want to kill 11 million people, you have to lie to them. He said, and it has to be a big lie, not a small lie. And it has to be told over and over and over. It has to be repeated over and over and over. You have to saturate the media. You have to tell people over and over this lie so they will believe it. Here's let me find this. I think I'm right on it here. Here it is. He said, the great masses of people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than a small one. He wrote that in his autobiography, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. The book was widely read by German people at the time. This was 1933 to 1945. At the very most, you would think that the masses would ignore him The fact is that fewer than 10% of Germany's population of 79 million people actively worked or campaigned to bring about Hitler's change. Even the height of its power in 1945, the Nazi political party only had 8.5 million members. So the remaining 90% of Germans, teachers, doctors, ministers, farmers, did what? Nothing. They stood by and watched. Mothers and fathers held their voices, covered their eyes, closed their ears. The vast majority of educated people accepted their salaries and avoided the uncomfortable truth that lingered over them like a serpent waiting to strike. And when the Nazis came for their children, it was too late. So Hitler's narrative is you tell a lie, you make it a big lie, and you tell it often enough so that people will believe it. So what we need to understand is how 11 million people, now listen to this, allowed themselves to be killed. Now there's been many movies and many books written about this. If you would put yourself in that position, and you can very easily today if you watch what's going on in Ukraine. The Ukraine are different in that they have stood up to Russia. They've stood up to Putin. They've stood up to aggression. They've stood up to the murderer. But the Jewish people and others like them in 1938, 39, when World War II began, they were lied to. They were told, if you get on this boxcar, we will transport you to a new part of the country, a new neighborhood, new schools, new homes, new jobs. The first thing that they did was they built fences around the Jewish neighborhoods. And here's what they told the Jewish people. This fence is to protect you. This fence is to keep out those that want to harm you, when actually the opposite was true. The fence was to contain them. It was to keep them located so they could eventually be shipped off to the death camps. Now, they didn't know they were going to death camps. They were told that they were going to a new neighborhood, a new community, new housing, new schools, and that they would flourish and they would thrive. So the lie was constantly repeated. Big lie, big lie. And so the people believed the lie and allowed themselves to be killed. Now, they didn't know they were going to be killed, but they listened to the lie. You've probably heard the old story about how do you boil a frog. You put the frog in cold water and you turn the heat up gradually. And the frog gets boiled alive. But if you boil the water first and then throw the frog in the water, he jumps out. Well, the very same thing is happening today in the world, not just in the United States. It's happening in our country, in America, but it's happening all over the world. And Jesus warned us in Matthew 24. I keep going back to Matthew 24 over and over and over again. Every time the Holy Spirit shows me something or reminds me something, I go back to Matthew 24 and I see that Jesus warned us in the gospel according to Matthew to beware of these things, because this lying syndrome continues today. Now remember, Satan's behind it all. Satan's a liar. He's the father of lies. And he, by his principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, wicked spirits, he dominates and controls certain leaders, politicians, presidents of countries, prime ministers of countries, congressional members. He is operating through human beings. If you can get people delivered from demon spirits and delivered from these principalities, they will be different people. But that's how Satan works. He inhabits, he possesses certain leadership persons, because that's how he can get his points across. He governs that way. If you can understand how Satan operates, I remember I read the book by Sun Tzu, who was a Chinese military specialist. And he wrote the book, The Art of War. And they teach that at the U.S. Army War College, which I attended for a seminar on military strategy. And the art of war, Sun Tzu says, the first thing you have to know if you're going into battle, into war, you have to know your enemy. You have to know your enemy. You have to know who your enemy is, and you have to know how he or she operates. And I have found that to be true. So you have to know who Satan is. You have to know how he operates. He's not a Halloween character in a red jumpsuit and pitchfork and horns. No, Satan is a spirit being. He's a fallen angel. We're going to see this week where he was cast out of heaven. He was called the serpent, the dragon, the devil. And that's how he operates. He deals in lies like Jesus dealt in truth. A lie is the opposite of a truth. And you think, well, I wonder why so many people would believe a lie. Why would anybody believe a lie? Why would anybody allow themselves to be killed, lied to, whatever? Because they don't know the truth. If you don't know the truth, you'll believe the lie. The lie is the opposite of the truth. Now, the first thing Jesus told his disciples was, take heed, wake up, church, wake up, disciples, and take heed, pay attention. Don't let anybody, any man, he said, deceive you. And then he told the disciples at that time in Matthew 24, he told them what to look for. He said there's going to be wars, rumors of wars. And let me just interject this in here because I hear all kinds of prophecy, conspiracy prophecy, and all kinds of forth-telling. We are not in World War III. What's going on between Russia and Ukraine is not World War III. And it will not lead us into World War III. If you study the First World War, Second World War, there were only 30 nations involved in either of those wars. It wasn't the whole world. There's about 150, 60 nations in the world. It was a small group of people that were warring against each other. And they all had different various reasons for getting in the war. So what we're seeing now is wars and rumors of wars. This is not World War III. Now, I'm paying close attention because in Ezekiel 38 and 39, it says, and it uses the word Gog, Magog, Meshach, Tubal, which refers to Russia and all of its partners. Moscow, it refers to that part of the world north of Israel. And it says that they will think an evil thought and they will begin to invade Israel from the north. Now, Hilton Sutton in 1982 wrote a book called World War III, and he plainly states that World War III is God's conquest of Russia. When Russia invades Israel from the north, and you know, I've watched and I've listened and I've read and I've prayed, I rather think, and I could be totally wrong, if I am, I'll admit it, not like some of the prophecy conspiracy theories that we've heard that don't come to pass. It's not God. But nobody will step up and say, I missed it. But if I miss it, you know, I'll admit that I missed it. I don't really think that we're as close to what we think World War III is going to be as we think we are. I think there's going to be a little more time for Russia to invade Israel from the north. Now, they already have a base in Syria, which is north, the Gaza Strip. They already are looking at Israel because Russia is in need of military hardware. They're in need of food. They're in need of petroleum, gas, oil. And Israel has all of that. Israel has military. Israel has location. Israel has gas and oil reserves bigger than any country in the world. They have food because they're the breadbasket of Europe. They're like Southern California. They grow all the food. You can see, if you know what to look for, in Israel, every night, 747s take off from Tel Aviv Airport, Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, and they fly to all of the major cities around the world. They fly to London, to Paris, to Warsaw. They go delivering flowers and food. They are supplying the world with things that no other nation is or can supply. Israel is prospering. They have their issues. They have the Palestinian issue. They're still hated by a lot of nations and a lot of races of people. But Russia is going to eventually think an evil thought. And you know, you don't know if Putin's going to live to be alive at that time. But Russia, the Bible's clear in Ezekiel 38:39, Russia is going to invade from the north. And when they do, then God is going to fight against Russia and will destroy them. It'll be supernatural. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Pastor Caldwell, where will we be? Well, according to the Bible, we will not be sitting in our living rooms watching this invasion on television. Not if you're a born-again Christian. If you're a born-again Christian, the Bible says before all that takes place, Jesus will rapture the church out of the earth, and we will be in heaven, the judgment seat of Christ, the marriage supper of the Lamb. We'll be receiving the rewards for what we've done in the body. After the church is gone, 2 Thessalonians 2, then the Antichrist, the false prophet, the beast system, will set up headquarters, and they will begin to do their thing. They will be the players at the beginning of the Great Tribulation period. The Antichrist will make a covenant with Israel. The first 3.5 years looks like, oh, it's going to be wonderful peace. But halfway through this treaty, he breaks the covenant, and all hell breaks loose, and people run to the wilderness. They pray for rocks to fall on them. I mean, it's going to be horrible. But the church will not be there, according to the Scriptures. Now, I realize, and you do too, there are some ministries, some denominations don't believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. I heard one minister friend, and I know him, known him for years, and he said this business of a secret rapture is a bunch of nonsense. That's his privilege, but that's not biblical. That's maybe the way he thinks, but that's not scriptural. So getting back to our topic here, how do you kill 11 million people? You lie to them. And we've seen this over the edge, how would I say, centuries. So how do you get 11 million people to allow themselves to be killed? You lie to them. The first thing that Hitler did, barbed wire fences were erected encircling entire neighborhoods. Adolf Eichmann and his representatives assured the Jewish leaders that this was a physical restriction being placed on them in their community, which later became known as ghettos, that was only a temporary necessity of war. How many times have you ever heard this tax is just going to be temporary? But what happens is they fail to remove the taxation. It accomplishes the objection that it was sold to the Congress on, but nobody ever goes back and ends the tax. It just keeps on going. As long as the people cooperated, they said no harm would come to you. Second, bribes were taken from the Jews in the promise of better living conditions. Bribes convinced the Jews that the situation was indeed temporary and no further harm would befall them. After all, they reasoned, why would the Nazis accept bribes if they intended to kill us. So it must be temporary. That must be the truth. It wasn't. Finally, Eichmann would appear before a gathering of an entire ghetto, accompanied by an entourage of 30 local men and officials of his own, many that he had hand-chosen of the people. And he addressed the crowd according to sworn statements. Here's what they heard. Jews, at last, it can be reported to you that the Russians are advancing on our eastern front. I apologize for the hasty way we brought you into our protection. We're going to protect you. Unfortunately, there was little time to explain. You have nothing to worry about. We only want the best for you. You will leave here shortly and be sent to a very fine place. Indeed, you will work there. Your wives will stay at home. Your children will go to school. You'll have wonderful lives. These were all promises. You remember we've heard these things before? You remember we heard our president say, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor in selling universal health care. It was a lie. It didn't turn out to be true. Men, please keep your families together and board the rail cars in an orderly manner. The Jewish husbands and fathers were relieved by the explanation and comforted by the fact that there weren't more armed soldiers. They didn't need them because people had been lied to and they accepted the lies. You know the end result. The trains wound up in Auschwitz. How do you kill 11 million people? You lie to them. We're going to continue this tomorrow. Be sure and join me for tomorrow's Arkansas Alive. We pray for you and pray for you daily and pray for God's blessings upon you, for you to know the truth, and the knowledge of the truth is what makes you free. So thanks for joining me today. Remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas, and wherever in the world you're watching too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on Twitter at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.